AuthentiKit fans, thank you for joining me again. This is what we're building today. It's the new Spitfire MkIX Flight Stick Generation 2, and I'm very excited about it. It's a little over 4 years since I released the original flight stick, and although I know hundreds of you have already built that version, I'm afraid you're really going to want to make this one now. In terms of engineering, the old one is just Stone Age compared to what's going on in here. Let me give you a quick run through of why it is so much better. Firstly, it's much stronger. This little flimsy pedestal here, which always kind of worried me, is replaced by this chunky unit here. Now, I haven't had reports of this breaking, but I do know that the spring mechanism at the top of here has snapped for a few people. Now, this needs to be a lot stronger because the spring tensions are so much greater. Just look at this. There's the roll. Let's see what the roll's like on here. And the pitch is even stronger. In fact, the pitch springs are 3 times stronger than the roll springs. I let VR flight sim guy Steve Walton have a try with a prototype of this earlier in the year, and he said it felt like force feedback. In fact, at full pitch, you've got 250 newtons of force on the springs that are pulling the pitch back to neutral. In fact, when I showed Steve, I was at RAF Coningsby with the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight, and I brought with me yet another prototype for Squadron Leader Mark Discombe to try out and give me feedback on. After many iterations over more than a year, I was delighted when he said yes. You see, with the old one, you really didn't need to trim because the return forces to neutral were so weak. With this, you really do need to trim. Visually, of course, it's in a completely different league, and for that, I have community member Jari Kaskelin to thank. All these hose fixings, just the bolts and details and all of this stuff, incredible work. He spent many hours modelling these, and he shared them with me to use with my spade grip and spring mechanism. Other improvements include a proper parking brake mechanism, and at this latch here. So when you pull the parking brake on, and you slide the latch across, now you can lock on the parking brake. Just like your old one, it plugs straight into your PC with one USB cable via our AuthentiKit Universal Hub using port H1. It works immediately in MSFS, DCS, X-Plane, IL2 and more with no extra software. Now, if you're new to AuthentiKit and you don't yet have a Universal Hub, then I recommend you first grab yourself the AuthentiKit Spitfire MkIX Starter Kit. And I just happen to have one here. Now, like all AuthentiKit controls, you can download all the 3D print files and the parts list for free. But for those of you without printers, you can just buy this all in one box from our friends at SimKit Supplies. You'll get the Universal Hub, you'll get a trim wheel set, printed parts, everything you need, cables, inputs, even the assembly tools are in here. So then not only do you have the inputs for the elevator trim and the rudder trim, but you get additional inputs for the throttle and for this flight stick. Now, for those of you self-printing and self-sourcing, all the links for the downloads and our support and troubleshooting forum, they're in the description below. Did you know we now have over 3,000 members in our community, so you will be in great company. I should point out that although we don't have a white box all-in-one solution for the flight stick, you can still buy a ready-made kit of hardware from SimKit Supplies, and they will source the printed parts for you via our network of community-approved printers. These are guys within the AuthentiKit community who have experience of printing AuthentiKit controls. They'll print the parts for you at an agreed mate's rates. Now, this is also called a recommended selling price. So we've agreed a recommended standard price, so you know you're getting a fair price. So you can find somebody in the States, the UK, the EU, Australia, New Zealand who will print the parts for this flight stick. The price for the parts we have now calculated at £100 or $100 in the US. So just go to the SKS website, and I'll link to the page in the description. You can buy the hardware, and then underneath that section, there's a form, and you simply say, this is where I am in the world, and Ruben at SimKit Supplies, he'll put you in touch with one of these community approved printers. Then you can deal direct with them. AuthentiKit doesn't make any money out of it. SKS makes no money out of it. It's just a way to get the community helping new folks get on board with AuthentiKit. Now, just like the original flight stick, this new one mounts to the same quick release bracket, although we do now have an upgraded version. That's fastened onto the end of an arm on the monitor stand standard mounting system. I'll put links in the description and you can see a little bit on the screen now. This new one, however, has a slight improvement because you can now apply 3 bolts from the back, which will clamp the dovetail to the mounting stick really firmly, because there's so much force now in the pitch and the roll that it was just kind of creaking and twisting on the fixing here. Okay, well that is quite enough waffle. Let's get started with the assembly. Here's the hardware, which you've either self-sourced or you've bought from SimKit Supplies. We're talking about fairly simple things: bearings, springs, wire, some webbing. I'll talk more about that later. Dowel pins, switches, and you'll have a few screws. So that's the hardware. And here are the printed parts. Again, you've either self-printed or you've had them printed by a friend in our community. And we have the assembly instructions and a wiring diagram and a printout of all the parts. There we go. Slight adjustment. Yours will be up to date. So that's a printout of all the parts. So that lets you know what you need. You can go buy those things yourself. Make sure you have the right specification of these things, particularly stuff like the RJ45 jack, which kind of come in different versions. There's a page on our website where every item's listed and the particular spec you need is all detailed there. All this stuff is in the free download that contains everything, the printed parts, everything, all free from our website. Then we have some tools. You've got a wire stripper, you've got a little magnet for orientation, you've got a PH2 and a PH1 screwdriver bit. They will come in your starter kit. So you should have those already. And then some things just you've got lying around the house: a ruler, just a little fine tip screwdriver, a pair of scissors, and I recommend one of these little task lights that just lets you point a little extra light at some of the small stuff. Quite handy. So that was the getting ready for assembly bit. I also recommend you check you've got all the parts before you start. There's another document of batches, a picture naming all of the printed parts that I showed you in the box there, showing how they get printed on the print bed as well, so you print them the right way up. So use the bill of materials and the print batches file to check you've got everything. And then, yeah, that's a reference to this video. So over the page, we have step 1 of the assembly steps. So let's go. Okay, step 1, let's get going. Fit the rotary damper, that's this, to stick back, which is this. It says watch the video because you can't just drop it straight in. There's a little kind of overhang lip there, and what you have to do is you have to sort of pop it underneath. Right, just get that little bit underneath there and then it will drop in. And then what you need to do is make sure it is really properly down. Maybe I'll even use my task light on this just to see it's properly in there. Anyway, there's a way of knowing it's in there because I should tell you why, because if that isn't the case, you can see the very top. In fact, I think it's not even properly down because the top of the little ridge of this, it's slightly proud of that surface, and that will create a problem later. So there we go, that got it. But I'll show you how you can be sure that it is properly seated, because it gets held down by these M3 screws with little damper washers, they're called, damper washer A and B. So just put that on there, and then that drops in here, and we screw that in, and you need the PH1 for that. So let's just screw that in there. There we go. Right. Now the tip of the screw is just flush or a fraction proud of that surface. If it doesn't reach that point, then this hasn't seated properly, and you'll get problems later because you'll basically damage things. The cogs will be raised too high, and they'll be causing some problems. Okay, perfect. So that's the damper. Not crucial, by the way. If you're self-sourcing, you can do fine without that. It just adds a little something. On the back of the real thing, for example, you do have a cog and you have a chain going over it. And then when you're turning the roll, you're pulling a chain around a cog. And I don't know, I sort of feel like that's, I get a sense of that going on. Okay, step number 2. We're going to assemble our first mag haul. Now, AuthentiKit fans who've been with us a while know all about mag hauls. This is a magnet and a hall sensor with a roll bearing. It's a 6003 roll bearing. Super strong thing. This would be like a car axle bearing. It's incredibly strong. And this will be the axis for our roll. So the way it works is you pop that in there. Make sure it's pressed flush to the top. We don't want a gap there. Then we pop the peg in here. That goes in like that. Now, there you go. That clicked in quite well. I feel quite sure that that is all the way in. I have found sometimes that when I put this together, in fact, we'll find out here, that when that gets clamped down, there might be some, we'll find out more when I screw this down, there might be a little bit of friction. But I'll tell you what to do if you encounter that. Okay, so that's where we're up to so far. Now, this is important. There's a tiny dimple there, and the north of that cube has to point to it. So the way you do that, you get the blue end of your magnet, and you do that. So now we know that that side is south and that side is north. So this is the easy way of getting it right. Take your screwdriver, hold it over the magnet. Make sure it doesn't sort of flip as you do it, and you can pull away the south. And now you know that that is north. And then just press it in, like that. And press it in quite firmly so that it is all the way flush and not slightly proud. You might need to sort of press it with a tool. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty flush. Okay. And then that goes over there. But first, we have to put the hall sensor in. So here's the hall sensor. It goes in, it follows the shape of the end, the profile of it that way. You may find you can shove it in the other way, yeah, but don't. It'll be wrong and you'll damage things. It'll drop in very easily this way, like that, just falls in, and it drops low. It drops like a millimeter down. That might not be obvious here, and that's deliberate, just to create the tiniest gap between the head of the hall sensor and the magnet. So we turn this over, and then we use our screwdriver. So just bend these legs and just push them away like this, so that they're dropping into these channels, and they're at kind of 45 degrees at the moment. Not all the way in, but they've begun to flatten out. Okay, so we're nearly there now. Now it says step 2, we would sort of assemble this. And it would just go like that. But actually, we're going to attach some wires in step 3, and it's slightly easier to attach the wires at this point before I screw these together. So that's what I'll do. Step 3, we want 40 centimeter lengths of red, blue, white wire. Okay, so I've just measured 40 centimeters of white and 40 centimeters of blue, and I'll do 40 centimeters of red. I'm just using scissors to cut these. They're very thin wire. Right, so those are the 40s. And we attach them in that order: red, blue, white, RBW. Try and just imprint that on your mind. So we strip off like that much, sort of 4 mil or so of insulation. And we take one of these little ferrules. Good way to do it is to have it sort of with the circle upright, and then you can press down with your finger. It sticks on your finger, and then you can just do that. And this is where you may find it helpful to put a little task light here and get some extra light on it. Okay, so I'm about to crimp that wire with this little ferrule onto the legs of the hall sensor, but I've just noticed that the hall sensor, when it drops fully seated in there, you see what's going on there? The legs are there's a little bit of a step on them. So I want to get rid of that step. That could create some wobble later once it's sort of... There we go. Right. So let's crimp this thing. We've taken off some insulation. We've given it a really good twist. We've got the ferrule sat on the table here with the hole upright, and then I press down with my finger. It sticks to my finger, and I can slide this on. Make sure it's properly on. Right, so it's on now. And then I can slide the ferrule over the leg. Okay, so it's over the leg and it's over the wire. I'm going to press the insulation down so that this wire isn't sort of flapping about and it'll shake itself off the leg. And then with the screwdriver, I'm going to give this a really good crush so that there's a really good electrical contact there. And that should be nice and strong. So that's the red. Right, blue. Go through this again. Okay, slightly more than last time. That's okay. Ferrule. On it goes. I'm actually going to put a little twist on the end. Stop it falling off. Just a little fold over. So it shouldn't shake off now. I need to bend this leg up a bit. Okay. Slide it on. Okay, and then press it down, get the insulation in so it doesn't shake about. Then I can press the ferrule into the channel and I can crush it. Okay. The important thing is that you don't get a stray wire going over from one channel to the next. So I don't think I've got a problem there. Good tip when we've done all this is to take a picture with your phone and then you can kind of zoom in on it. Okay, so it's RB, RBW, last one. Strip some off. You will need more crimps than the bill of materials because you'll lose some in the carpet. Okay, so there it is, RBW and no frayed wire. So there's a clean green sort of insulated strip between each of them and they're all good and strong. So that's an important milestone. You'll be doing 2 more of those, so you'll get a little bit slicker as time goes on. Right, now we'll finish that step 2, which is to put that on top and have these 3 M4 20mm screws, PH2 screwdriver, tighten that up and clamp it all the way down tight. Now we'll find out what the friction's like here. Not too bad. Yeah, that's okay. It's just a little bit of rubbing. A little bit more than if it was completely freewheeling bearing, but nothing to worry about. If there is a bit more friction going on, I'll show you later on where what's happened is that this peg hasn't sort of completely lifted to the final sort of seating place. But as we pull on it, there'll be a screw on that later on, and something will press against that bearing. And as you tighten that screw up, you'll just shift it that tiny bit, which gives you the clearance. So that's what happens if you think that it's really quite stiff. So that's 2 and 3. Step 4, feed the red, blue, white wires under the wire guide bridge. So what's going to happen is that's going to be in here. These wires are going to go along there. So we don't want any twists in the wires. So we take the white one first and we just run it under this little bridge here. Okay. And then the blue one right next to it, not crossing over. And then the red one. Again, not crossing over. Okay, so they're running nice and smoothly because they're not crossed over. Then we can just slide this in like that. Take up all the slack. take up all the slack like that and then drop that in. And then we can fasten that down with 3 M4 10mm screws. Okay. There it is. Okay, number 6. Run the wires down the narrow side channel, the end wire guide, and then the wire guide below the primary wire channel. Right, let's start here. So this is the side wire guide. And let's, again, minimizing twisting. You have to sort of press this in. It's tighter at the top. There's a little sort of overhang lip. And then it's looser once it's in. So you will have to sort of push it with your fingernail, but makes it slower to fit, but it won't drop out. Okay, nearly there. Last one. Okay, that's the side bit done. Now the end wire guide. So again, avoiding the crossover. Red. And blue is next. And white. Okay, now again, minimizing crossover. Let's do it this way. Sending this white wire up here. I'm going to have that on the right hand side. Blue one in the middle. Push these over. Red on the left. There we go. Red on the left. Right. So there we go. That's the neat way of doing it. I think that's about the neatest. And then what I refer to here as the primary wire channel is this thing. This thing here. It's quite big. Can't quite get a screwdriver through it, but it's pretty big. And all the wires are going to be going through there. So let's put these through now. And this one is definitely one, throughout the build, we're going to be minimizing crossover on this. So I've already crossed it over. Let's red on the right, then blue, and then white. Right, so there it is. Red, blue, white, no crossing over. Number 8, we're going to fit the roll webbing roller guides. Now, these are the parts that make that up. We have some bearings, some 4 bearings, and we have these kind of washers. They're sort of separators for the bearings. I call them separator 1U and 1L, 2U and 2L. They're actually all identical, but what you do need to notice is that then this looks very flat on one side, and it is, but on the other side there's a tiny ridge at the middle. It's just slightly raised at the middle. And it's important which way up you fit these. And this is how it goes. You put the screw in through the bearing cap, and you put it in from the side that's got a little nick in it. That's a reference sort of alignment marker, actually. Not the side that has the raised sort of shim there. So from that side. So do that and that. Let's get both of those in. Then, on each one, put a bearing. That'll drop in very easily. Then put one of these, but with the raised lip, a little raised inner ring, down. So that presses against the bearing. Same on the other side. And then another one, and this time with the raised ring up. Like that. Okay. And now you can put another bearing on each. And you'll find that those are very free running bearings now. And then what you need to do, it's sort of easy to do this slightly, holding things slightly upside down, because we're going to fit this to here. We're going to fit it that way so the flat bit is down there. The flattened off bit. Yeah, the angled bit. So just put it like that. Hold it over the screws and just try and get a turn with your fingers so it doesn't collapse and everything fall apart. Yep, caught that. And then you need your PH2 screwdriver, and we can tighten that down nice and strong, tight as you like. Should slightly tighten up to the end. Good and tight. And if you put those little grey washers in the right way round, then even though it's very tight, the bearings will run very, very smoothly. There's no friction there at all. Okay, that's great. That's running great. Okay, that's the roll webbing roller guides. Now for the webbing. Okay, I call it webbing. It's, it's kind of like seatbelt material, but it's thin, 0.4mm thin. It's very, very strong. I've done tests with this and nearly broke my back trying to lift this really heavy iron radiator with some stuff that was half the thickness, and it was fine. Gross grain ribbon is, so it's kind of an embroidery thing, really. That's what you're looking for. Look on the website. There's an ATK code for it in the bill of materials. Go and look at the website and get the specification. It's 9mm wide. In the States, 3/8, you'll be okay, 3/8 of an inch. And the thickness is crucial, 0.4mm. And you want a very smooth ribbon. We don't want bits of frilly embroidery, nothing that's going to wear or snag. It's nylon or polyester. You don't want anything stretchy. But for these purposes, even though at full pull, we've got a 25 kilogram load on this, it's well up to the job. So that's what we're using. Now we need a 30 centimeter length. So let's measure out 30. And then we fold it in half, like this. And we tie an overhand knot. So that is, I'm going to tie it really kind of big at first, and then we'll tighten it up. So that's what we've got there. You can see how it looks, like that. And we'll tighten that up. So I guess it's like looks a little bit like tying a tie at the moment. But the crucial thing is the distance. We want about 15mm at the end. What have we got there? More like 2 centimeters, isn't it? Oh no, a bit over 15mm, but I'm going to go slightly less. And then what we got there? Yeah, that's okay. Slightly less is okay. And then I'm going to really pull on it. Really pull on it. Because otherwise, when we start working the stick and putting some tension on it, that knot will close up, and all the settings that I come up with here will be wrong. It'll suddenly go slack. So pre-tensioning is good. Right, so that's done. Now number 10, we're going to slot this knot and the webbing into the channels of this roll disc. And then we fit the belt cover. So it goes like this in there. Goes into this channel here. And then it separates so that the two separate pieces go into these separate grooves and separate slots. Okay, that's exactly what you want. Just make sure this is seated and sort of press down here. Yeah, there's room for it to drop a little bit there. So it should be like that. Then we can fit the belt cover. Now, it's not very obvious, but In fact, if you printed this the way we recommend, the smooth side that was on the print side, that goes down, and the upper side, which has a tiny little chamfer, I don't know if you can see that chamfer. That tiny little chamfer is a seating for the screw here, for these tiny M3 countersunk screws. So it goes in like that, and slightly easier if you've got a PH1 screwdriver for these tiny screws. And then we just get that cover on there. Okay, and then it says again, get plenty of tightening in that. Now we're going to slip the ends of this webbing through those roller bearings. And it can be a little fiddly, but this useful tool will help. So this thing, it's a webbing grip shim, I've called it. It's slightly wider at one point and narrow at the other. Now if you do this, take the narrow bit and just drop it in the end there. That should make it easier to slide the webbing through the gap. There we go. And then hold on to the webbing as you drag it out again. There. Okay. And then we can rotate the big disc over the top of the D shape. And we're in. Now there's resistance to movement, of course, because we've got a hydraulic damper in there. That is in. Okay, great. So we're going to use our webbing grip shim again, as a tool again, because we're going to slide the webbing now through this webbing grip. So let's drop it in there. And the way we do it, the direction we do it is so that the screw holes are towards this side, towards the center of the stick rather than pointing away from the stick. And that should just go in quite easily, more easily than the bearings. There's more space in there. Okay, so that's what we're after. Now the first of our springs. We've got 50mm springs and 63mm springs. This is the one for the roll. And we take a loop end of the webbing and we just slide it. Your springs may be kind of open or more closed like this, but there's always a tiny gap. You can see that sort of tiny gap in there. And that's what we're using to just slide the loop of the webbing over, like that. And now we take this thing called a single yoke, and we fit that over the spring, like this. Okay. And now we test the length. What I suggest here, let's turn over the page, that the single yoke should be around 5 to 8mm short of this anchor point. So a way of looking at that is like, how well do those holes, because it's going to pull across and go like that, how much is it short? And I'd say that's a bit less than 5 to 8. So this is where we can do some adjustment. We can add some more tension to that, because otherwise there won't be so much return force. And there's 3 levels of adjustment. But what you need to do is we need to lift that out. The easy way of doing that, because it's kind of hard to get a grab on it, is to take any sort of screw, like a 20mm screw it in just a little bit so that it goes over so it gets a grab of it, and then we can pull this and turn it upside down. And we're going to put a tightener. I've got 5°, 10° or 15° tighteners. And as it says here, you could revisit this whole thing, say in a week, if you find that that knot has tightened up and you've got a little bit more slack. It's slightly fiddly later on, but it's very doable. So, but I think at this point we do need a touch more. So what we do is we take the knot and we slide it back a bit. There we go, just create a little gap. There we go, there's enough. And these are the tighteners. You can see that they're curved. One of them's in green for some reason. That's 5°, that's 10, and that's 15. We don't need loads, but I'm going to go for the 10. That will just give me a bit more. So the way you do that is so we've created enough of a gap there now, and then I slot that, get the, kind of spot where the curvature is, the outside of it, and drop that in here. You might need to sort of play around a little bit until it clearly seats. You definitely don't want it sort of pressing with some webbing underneath it so it's kind of sticking up a bit. You want it seating fully in there, and then when we pull on that, then the knot just is held back a little bit, and then we can rotate things back round again, drop them in, and now, oh yeah, there's loads there. Oof, that's more like 10, isn't it? Oh well, that's going to be good. That'll give us a nice good roll force. I probably could have got away with the 5, but it's fine. So now what we do is we just drag that with our fingers and it will slot over the top there. And to make it fully secure, we use 2 M4 round 20mm screws. Okay, right. Well, with that degree of tightening, I've got no worries about this being a weak return force. Very strong return force. Okay, now we're going to center the roll disc. And if you look carefully, you'll see that there is a little kind of rough, it's not very clearly printed line on here, and a bit of a line here. And they need to be basically lined up. They probably are already, but you can see it's possible that they won't be, that they aren't. And if you just sort of rotate them like that, then they'll line up. Good. So that is everything centered. Now, to stop that alignment getting lost, we put a couple of screws in here, and we nip that up tight. But rather than screw directly against the webbing and sort of risk damming it with the screw heads, this webbing grip shim now becomes, well, I call it a shim because it goes in here on this side of the screws. So the screws drive into the plastic rather than into the webbing itself. So what we do now is we cut this off, and we just cut it slightly behind that step. We don't need all of that step. That should be enough to go in, yeah, basically the length of that. And then we just slide it in, push it in with the screwdriver so that it goes all the way in. And now we put 2 M4 8mm round head screws. Yeah, M4 8mm round head. Slide the grip all the way up to the spring. Otherwise, we'd have too short a distance here, and that would restrict our rotation. And then just give that a good old tighten. It shouldn't need to go all the way in, as in, you know, the screw head up against the plastic. It should be very strong, just a fraction short of that. Yeah. Okay. Okay, step 20. I've introduced into this build something a little bit different, which is the chance to do a check on the wiring before it's finished, rather than put it all together, have a whole load of complicated wiring, and kind of then discover something's a bit off. So we've got a checkpoint A. And what we're going to do here is we can test that that roll is generating the right kind of output. Now, we can't roll it with our fingers, so I didn't mention this in the instructions, but in order to give that, to get some sort of twist on that, get some purchase on it to roll it, you're going to have to screw a little bit of this aileron bracket on. So let's just do that. It's 10mm screws. I'm just going to temporarily fit it on, just with 3 screws for now. Doesn't matter about the middle. And now we can get the roll and, yeah, get a sense of what the feel of this thing's like. It will pop off if you're not careful, but just it's enough to do this for the test. What we can do now is use the RJ45. We connect up just the left-hand 3. I've already stripped off about 3mm. That's probably the right sort of amount there of insulation. We've seen these before. If you haven't, then what we're looking for is there are 8 channels, and in each channel there's some tiny metal teeth, and you just place in the stripped wire over those teeth, and then the insulation is just back from it, and then you click that down and it crushes, and we've got a good contact. And the thing to watch for is that, because you can kind of see that if you look across the channel, you can see the tooth of the adjacent channel, which means that if you've got a whole load of wire, let me just explain what I'm doing now. We're stripping a little bit off. Definitely less, it's important that it's a small amount, and then give it a really good twist, because what I was saying before is we don't want the contacts from this one touching the tooth that's just sort of poking through the plastic barrier wall there of the other one. But if you keep it short, you'll be alright. So that's RBW, same RBW. Okay, and then the last one. So they're staggered, which kind of helps avoid unintended contacts. That's RBW, so that's in there. You've got your universal hub, I'm assuming, because I do recommend that the way to start all this is to get the starter kit, the Mark 9 starter kit. It comes with, if you get the all-inclusive, which is actually quite good value, even if you've got a printer, then you get the universal hub box, you get all the printed parts, all the hardware, all the tools, all the little magnets, it's all in there. The instructions for the starter kit, which is primarily to set you up with the trim wheels, also includes the wiring and the sockets. This is actually more than that. I've got extra sockets, but the starter kit gives you the first 4, and that includes the stick. So we've got the stick input. I'm assuming you've wired that as per the other video. We connect up the universal, we connect up the RJ45. So that goes like that. Do that first before you plug this in to your PC. And let's just try it right now. Okay, so I've launched game controllers. That's joy.cpl if you want to run it from the command line. And I have yet to plug in the AuthentiKit box, so that's why we don't see that on the list. So I'll do that now. Take that thing out. Right. Okay, there's AuthentiKit. That's good. That's a good start. If you don't see that quickly, by the way, unplug things. You might have something wired up and shorted. But there it is. That's what you should see. And then we hit Properties, and we see a single axis, just the Y-axis. That's all we've got connected. And then we're just looking for some smooth movement. Yeah, it won't go full travel. That is because we haven't calibrated yet. And in fact, we can't calibrate until we've got an X and a Y axis. It's just something with game controllers I've found. But we're getting the smooth movement that we want, and it's centering, so that is absolutely fine. If you have trouble at this stage, basically, there aren't too many things that can go wrong, can there? You've either got a connection. Let me just take this here. You either check those over, have a really good look, take a photo with your phone and just check everything is in the right order, first of all, and that there isn't anything spilling across the channels, and then pop that up, and you'll have to check the mag hole in there as well. But you should be fine if you've been careful. I very rarely, this was first time. I didn't have to do this twice for the video. And if you're careful, you should have exactly the same experience. Okay, step 21. Take 2 M4 50mm countersunk screws and poke them through these 2 holes, the middle holes in the base of stick back. So they don't exactly poke through, they will need to be screwed through, so let's just do that. And you are, hopefully you can see that on the camera. I'm screwing them through until we can just see them emerging. That's about that. Is that fairly visible? I hope so. And then the next thing we do is we drop 2 of these M4, these tiny 684ZZ bearings over them, like that. One over there, and one over there. And then screw up a bit more until there's a bit more showing. And then we slip a couple of these bearing spacers, pitch bearing spacers over the top of the bit of screw that's now showing. Right, I've just changed the focus of the camera there, so hopefully you can see that more clearly. And let's push these through a bit more. And then we just want that screw to be just slightly starting to emerge from the bearing spacer, because there is just enough room to push the last bearing over between the two of them. And in fact, you kind of need to do this. The way I've achieved it is I've got the screw head, the tip of the screw just slightly too far, so I can't get the bearing in. But as I slowly pull it back, there should be a point at which it drops in, and there we go. And I'll just nudge it across here. There, got it. Now this will go all the way in. Okay, same with the other one, so drop that over. Yeah, it won't quite go in. Just pull that back a bit. There it is. And then I can drive it all the way in. Takes a lot of turns, but it's very strong. At full pitch, we've got a tension of 25 kilograms pulling on these, on the webbing that's going to go through these. So strong is good, and that should be nice and free running. Okay, and we're in. And I'll be amazed if your wrist is not aching at this point, but that is in. Okay, step 23. Another mag haul, absolutely the same as the last time. It's red, blue, white again as last time, and it's assembled the same way, and the wires are 10 centimeters long. Now, as much as I'm sure you enjoy watching me assemble mag hauls, I've just gone and done that. If you really do like watching me assemble mag hauls, I did make another video purely assembling mag hauls, although I think the one in the video was the one with friction in it with a cork disc, but it's the same mechanism. So I'll link to that just if you're looking for more tips to do this right and maybe you're finding it a little bit fiddly. But anyway, I've gone and done it. So that's 23, 24 done. And we're going to fit that pitch mag haul to the roller. Now it's roller left-hand side, 3 parts to the roller. There's the left-hand side, there's the right-hand side, and there's the middle. And they're all going to bolt together. So we're going to fasten this to the roller left-hand side, and it just drops in like this. It should sit nice and flush with the top. And we clamp that down with 3M4 14mm screws. Okay, that's the left-hand side. Number 26, we assemble a partial mag haul. So that is most bits of a mag haul. It's the bearing goes into the cap. Make sure it's absolutely pressed against it, and the peg that has to be tight up there as well. So that's a partial mag haul, and we fasten that to the roller right hand side here with 3M4 20mm screws. Okay, that should be nice and free running, and that should be nice and free running. That's good. Okay, it's time for some more webbing. It's a 33 centimeter length we want this time. Okay, 33. And as before, we fold it in half and we tie another overhand knot. So make it nice and wide to start with. Okay, like that. Let's level it up. And then start tightening it up. And we want about 15mm again. Out the end. Tighten it that way. Yeah, that's about right. I think I can start applying some tightening pressure there. That's good. So now we go to roller right hand side, that's this one, and we slide the webbing into this channel. So the knot goes up here. It follows this gap, and as before, it splits. There. Let's make sure everything's nicely in place. That's got it. Nothing near the top. Perfect. Now in this hole, we fit a 25mm countersunk screw. It doesn't actually join anything to anything, but it just adds some strength to that little lug there. Because, as I said, there's quite a lot of force pulling on it. So there's the 25 going in, and that should go all the way through and just protrude a fraction. There we go, just the tiniest bit protruding. Okay, another page. We are getting there. Now we join them together. Number 30, we've got roller left hand side, we've got roller mid, and mid goes that way, and roller right hand side. That's the way it goes. So that plate there covers over here and stops that webbing popping out. And we do that with the last of our 3M4 50mm countersunk screws. Now we're making a really chunky, strong unit. This beast of a thing, quite sort of weighty and so on, is kind of the equivalent of that thin sort of pedestal we had on the first version of the stick. The one that we had to slide all those wires down inside. So completely different order of magnitude in terms of the strength of the base of this. Good and tight. These screw heads, by the way, should be flush or even slightly recessed. I'm going to tighten that one up. I don't want any of that coming through. Yeah, that's better. That's better. Because otherwise it's going to rub and we're going to get some scraping because of what's going to rotate here. Step 31. We're going to take the 3 wires from the stick back, red, blue, white. They're the roll mag hole wires. They're going to go through this slot here. They're going to pop out of that hole there. And we don't want any twisting. Keep the red, blue, white. And when they pop out the other side, we're going to stick a bit of Scotch tape on them to keep them differentiated, because we'll put more red, blue, white wires over there later on. But what I think's probably slightly easier in terms of the process of this is put the Scotch tape on now. It'll just make it easier to slide them through. So let's just do that. Keep them nice and tight together. And red, blue, white. Okay, there they are. Just being really careful here to avoid any crossovers. Okay, that's good. Now, next bit is take the webbing loop, slide that between the bearings. Okay, that goes through there. Right, that's that done. Okay, D shims. We have 2 of them. They go over the pegs on both sides of the mag holes. Well, there's only a mag hole on one side, isn't there? The other one's a half mag hole, but there's 2 pegs, and there's D shims go over there. And then we take roller bracket, left-hand side and right-hand side. So these are similar, but kind of mirrors of each other. If you look at the flat bit without the curve on the top and put that down like that, point them so that the little cavities here are towards each other. That's how they're going to go. And inside them, you'll see there's a printed over area, which we're going to put a screw through. So basically that hole is blocked. And what we need to do is clean out that covered screw hole with a Phillips head screwdriver. So let's take one of these and just do that. Do that on both of them. And then, just to make sure that we don't get any kind of debris that will cause things to sort of separate out, just kind of work them a bit and scrape them a bit. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's clean enough. Okay, that's that. That's the cleaning out bit. And now fit the left-hand side and the right-hand side over the pegs. So let's just line the D shapes up before we do that, make it easier. So it's pointed that sort of way, at that kind of angle. Same there. And then we can put the... That's gone on. And here, that's gone on. That's going on. And then we screw the side brackets to stick back with 4 M4 25mm screws. So one on that side, one on that side, and then one here. There we go. And that should be free running now, and you shouldn't get any scraping sound. Remember I was talking about these screw heads here. They're very close, but there is a tiny gap. And there's no scraping. Brilliant. That's just what we want. And there's also these little limits, sort of limiters here. So you should find that whatever you do, you don't end up losing the webbing. It should stay there. And we've still got our red, blue, white. Right, so that was 36. 37, we still don't have a screw in these holes yet. So now we do that. That's 2 M4 20mm. Okay, still nice and free running. Brilliant. And now we're at checkpoint B. So we can do exactly as we did before. Remember we took the red, blue, white, this red, blue, white. Now we've got a second red, blue, white. And that's the pitch red, blue, white. And you can connect it to the same RJ45 and the same channels, the same red, then blue, then white from the left. And it'll be just as before. We'll still be moving the pitch y-axis, but we will confirm that everything's fine with that pitch mag hole. And that's the peace of mind that we may want at this stage, but let's move on. Okay, this is the pitch spring yoke. It's got two bits. You've got the pitch spring yoke base, like that, and the pitch spring yoke top. Do I call it top or cap? Lid. And what we're going to do is we're going to slide the webbing down through the slot in the pitch spring yoke base, and slide the slim pitch bar through the loop emerging underneath. So it says underneath the chamfered side. That's the chamfered side, so that's the right way up. And we take this bit of webbing and we just slide it through. Okay. A little help with the screwdriver here. It's not the easiest thing, but we'll get there. There it is. There it is. Right. Through it goes. So it's down that way. So make a note of the direction of this thing. You've got these little rings up here, and it's going down that way. And then we don't want it dropping out. I'm just going to pop that through here for now. And these are the pitch bars. We've got this fatter one and this slim one. So that's the slim one, and it recommends putting the slim pitch bar through. This has come off the printer like that with a brim on it, just because it's got printed that way up. So it would have fallen off the print bed, wouldn't it? So let's just get rid of those little bits of brim, and then we take that little pitch bar and we put it in here, and then that will stop the webbing falling back through. So that's doing its job right now. And now we need our big chunky 63mm pitch springs, and we fit the loops of both pitch springs over the recesses in the yoke base. So that's this recess and this recess. Hold it like that. And then we've got the lid, which goes over there. And we screw those together from the top using 4 8mm countersunk screws. Okay, let's get that one in. Right, it's easier when you've got one in. Then we can get the other one in at the top. Get the top two in first. Okay, now you shouldn't lose the springs once you've got the top two in, and then the bottom one, but I'm not clamping all the way. going to tell me that in a second, but before you just follow the video and clamp it up tight. No, we're not doing that yet. Okay, 41. Before tightening the screws, as I said, we pull the webbing taut and check the alignment marks. Now actually, rather than just pulling it taut, the easiest thing is if you drag it up to these little unhappy face sort of things here, hold them with your finger, and in fact, if there's any sort of skew of that yoke, straighten that up now. And what we're going to do, the alignment mark is basically this surface here, and do you see there's a V kind of shape there? And what I'm going to do is if I pull, maybe it's not loose enough at the moment. It's not far off actually. Ah, you see what happened there? I rotated it that way and it slipped. It kind of ran through here. It slipped over the top of the pitch bar, and now we're really gone off the alignment. So I'm going to turn it the other way. It seems to like going one way more than the other. I think with the tension on it, it's not happy to do that. So I think if I take some of that tension off, pull it through. Let's pull these back up again. Straighten that up. There we go. Right, so we've pulled it back a bit. It's slightly off, and it seems to be that if I rotate it this way, the webbing will slip slightly. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yep. And that has brought us perfectly in alignment. So that is good alignment. Okay, so now let's adjust for length and desired tension. So I suggest that the springs should be around 8 mil short of the dual spring yoke seating. So what does 8 mil look like? So release them. No, I'd say that's not 8 mil. We need a bit more tension here. There's a lot more leverage on the pitch than there is on the roll. So a good amount of tension here is a good thing. You'll appreciate that. So the way we do that is that in fact, it's probably going to mess up our alignment, but it's good to have shown you, is we're going to take that out and we're going to put the fat one in. Now it says if the springs are already, if I remember this rightly, if the springs are already really quite far away because of the way you tied the knot, then you can replace that with something even thinner. You could use a little bit of PLA, or maybe just a paper clip, just a little bit of that thin wire from a paper clip. Again, it'll just stop it going through there, but I'm going to put this in, this sort of chunkier one. That will definitely add more tension. Okay, and now let's see how we're doing. Oh yeah, right, we've got to pull that up. That will be good. That's plenty of tension. That will be good. Right. Now, how are we doing with alignment? Good. We're slightly off, but it's the way that's slightly easier to correct for, which is if I twist this that way, we'll get a little bit of sliding of the webbing. Probably not noticeable on the camera, but we're now aligned. Yeah, that's good enough. And now we can tighten these 4 screws. Okay, we're starting on a completely new section, the spade grip and the fire button. So we take 2 6mm dowels, those are steel dowel pins, and we slide them into the rocker button from the side. So that's the rocker button. I've done it in red. You can do it in silver, but either way. So in they go. It says if one side's a bit tight, try to clean the opening. So it may be that when you printed it, it's a little bit sort of sticky and there's a bit of sort of debris or loose filament there. If you get that, and it's kind of really, this worked fine, but if you get that and it's really kind of hard, you can kind of jamming these dowel pins in, just try and sort of free it up a bit first, because you may find that if you have to take this out later and it's sort of quite tight in there, you'll you could really struggle to remove it again if you need to. But that's no problem. That'll be fine. So that's that done. Another page again. We're on 44. Drop the rocker button into the fire case. Right. So the clean, pretty side is away from the thumb recess. Right. The reason for that is it's printed on its side, okay? Which means that, in fact, it would have been printed that way, which means that the smooth, quite neatly sort of curved, filleted top here is what will be on the upper side. But if you try and print a fillet shape onto a print bed that way up, it never works. It's always scruffy, which is why I generally, it's a bit of an exception this, generally only ever have something which has a chamfer, a sharp sort of 45-degree angle on it, if it is down on the print bed. But I kind of made an exception here, and you sort of get away with it because you don't tend to see that slightly scruffy side. You see that smooth side if you do it that way around and have the scruffy side over there sort of blocked out rather than on that side where you can see it. So anyway, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about dropping the rocker button into the fire case so that the clean, pretty side is away from the thumb recess, which I've done, and then slide the dowels out. So let me kind of just line these up. There's two holes in the, just wiggle it around till you find them. Two holes in the side. There we are, and there we are. See how they've slid to the side? And let's just check that we've got the pretty side. Yeah, the pretty side is there where you're going to see it. So that goes like that. And then drop the rocker plug, that's this tiny little thing, into the gap. And that will kind of keep them in place. So just press that down. There it is. That won't come out now. And now we need a couple of fire springs. So there they go. They should just sort of sit in by themselves. Might need a little bit of a twist. Try to get them kind of pointing straight up rather than, pointing out at an angle or anything, because they need to seat on the opposite side. So maybe a little twist helps sort of straighten them out. But yeah, that's good. So they're not sort of going over like that, or they're not canting inwards. Okay, place the fire case down on the table with the recessed wire guide, and that's this little line there. See that there? To the top, like above you. Then click the tacked case, that's this, in it, so that the tack case angle wires, that's these, the angle wire guide, align with that. So this is where we're going to get those springs dropping into those little cavities, which they should do, yeah. And then that should, might need a little bit of, there we go, needs a good old click. And now you can see that this wire guide is a continuous sort of curved channel. And we're good. It looks like I managed to seat the springs okay. You can kind of see just the edge of the spring there and there. And they've gone into their holes, which is what we wanted. And we are good. Be careful now. If you push that hard, you'll pop that thing out. You'll pop the case out. But if I hold it in with my thumb, I can now rock the red button, or I could press the red button. Okay, 48. Let's put this to one side right now because we're moving on to the spade grip. That's this lovely iconic shaped thing. And we need to hold it in a certain way while we do this next task. We need to hold it so that that tube is to the right as opposed to that way. So hold it like that. And we need to take 70 centimeters of black and yellow and green wire and thread all three of those up through the left hand hole in the base. So it's left hand looking at you that way because there's a right hand hole and it's the left we want. So we just thread them up and It should just go up. You might need to give it a little twist at some point when it has to negotiate some of the bends inside there. But kind of keep on going, and there we go. And as they near the top, just give them a bit of helping hand. Okay, that's that one. Green. Now pull them through so we get about 20 centimeters through the hole at the top. Actually, there's no harm having loads. As long as there's a reasonable bit at the bottom. We're going to be working up at this end, so let's have lots of wire. Now, thread these wires, this is step 49, through fire case back. So that's fire case back, with the wires emerging on the flat side. So they're going to come out there, so they're going to go in here. So let's get them through there. Alright, and the reason for that is it's going to sit like this when it's done. Or, yeah, be like that when it's done. So let's get those through. That was 49. Right, hold the tack wire press. That's this tiny little thing facing you with the chamfered corner in the bottom left. So that way. Chamfered corner in the bottom left. And thread the yellow and green wires through the bottom hole from behind. Right, so yellow and green, and then the black wire through the top from behind. Alright, so there we are. Now we take an 8 centimeter strip of black wire. That was 51. And now take off about 5 mil off the insulation of all the 3 wires emerging from the press, so all these 3, and also from the short black wire. So about 5 mil, usual thing. Fingers. Whenever you do this, always give them a twist. Now take 2 flat tacked switches. So that's what we're talking about here. You can see that the legs on them look like that. We want them sticking out to the side with no kinks, absolutely flat. So just pull them out with your fingers like that. But then we want to get rid of those kinks. So hold them over some sort of surface that you're happy to press against. And use a screwdriver to just get rid of the kink as best you can anyway. Okay, it's ferrule time again. Your favorite bit, I know. We're going to put a ferrule over all 5 ends. And what we can do this time, which we didn't do with the mag hole, but there's a bit more scope for it this time, is to stop the ferrule flying off. The reason we went slightly more, the 5 mil, is that we can just fold the wire over and then it'll stay on. Because these legs are a bit longer, so there's kind of room to do that. Now, we're up to 55. Place the 2 tack switches in front of you, side by side. Buttons down. Legs to the sides, and then we're going to connect the short black wire to that top left one and that top right one. So we're going to slide it on, and the combination of the leg, the wire, the ferrule, we should find that it stays on. Okay, so that's what we've got so far. Now fit the long black wire crimp over the left tack top right leg. So the long black one, left tack top right. So this one here. Now the yellow wire over the right tack bottom left. So this is the right tack bottom left. So down here. And then the green one over the left tack bottom right. Okay. So when you're done, it should look like this. That's 56, 57, 58. Now we place the tack switches in the tack case. And they should stay on. So we put them in like that. Put this in like this. And now, at the end of each channel, where the leg is, it narrows. The channel narrows. And the reason for that is that you can now press the wire insulation into it and it will grip it. And it should hold the tack in place. Okay, see what I mean? That black wire there is sort of gripped now. The green is gripped, the yellow is gripped. There's not much grip goes on with the black up here actually. These don't grip so well. But what we can do is we can press that black one into the channel, and that will kind of hold it in place fairly well. There we go. So that's what we're looking for. Haven't crushed the ferrules yet, but things should be staying where we want them to stay. I think we're safe just to press down hard on here now. So let's start up here. Worth holding the tack switch just to be sure. I'd recommend getting the point of the screwdriver on here, just to know that you've got a good crush on it. Okay, one more left. Just going to push that ferrule slightly in. Okay. I think we're good. Okay, that's 60 done. 61, we slide the tack wire press along. I guess I should have said earlier, try not to get a load of twists. I mean, I haven't here, but I guess there is potential for a load of twists. So you can see now that the yellow and green are at the bottom, black's at the top, and this press is going over into the cavity. There's a chamfer at the bottom of the press, which slots in. So you can see that that sort of slots in there, that lower bit. So there's a chamfer there. So get that in first and then click the top bit and it clicks into place. So it should hold all by itself anyway. But to be sure, we have a tiny M2 self-tapping screw that we will put into here. And that will keep the wire pressed down. Right, the next bit then. We slide the fire case back up to the fire case. Now it isn't symmetrical, so that's the right way around. That works. You'll find that if you have it the other way around, let's just show you, then it's off. The screw holes don't line up, but that way around is good. Then we can fasten the back down onto the case with 4 of these M3 countersunk screws. Okay, step 63. We're up to another checkpoint, checkpoint C. Now, in the interest of time, I'm not going to take you through this test because it's already a fairly long video, but just to show you how you can test that these are working. You may be a little nervous as to whether those tack connections are good and sound. We can test with the RJ45 again, but it's not the first 3 channels. These are not axes. We're not using mag holes. We're using the second channel, so 1, 2. So second one in, that's the fire button shared ground. And then skip 2, and then the yellow and the green. So skip 1, put the black in there. I'll just pop it in just to show you without stripping them. Skip 2, 1, 2, there, and then next to it there. So that is, with them stripped as before, just 4mm. Connect that up again with the Ethernet and the universal hub, and you will see a button press for each one of those machine gun and cannon. If you press down the middle, you should see both light up on your game controller. But we will move swiftly on to step 64, where we gently pull the wires at the base until the fire case is snug with the spade handle. bit there. That's it. And the dimple, the recess, the thumb recess should be on the left-hand side. So that's where we are right now. 65, screw the fire case base, that's this, to the spade handle with an M4 10mm screw. So we're not attaching it to this just yet, but attaching it to this. And let's get it the right way round. It'll look right that way. Will it look right that way? No, definitely not. So it's that way. So it's a 10mm in the middle. Push it through there first. Yeah, that's good. And then the fire case base, the fire case back. So we're talking about these two screws here, 2 lots of the 20mm. Brilliant. That's nice action. Let's move on to something different. The brake lever handle. So we connect the brake lever post to the brake lever handle, number 67. So there's the post. It goes in that way. There's only one way. And it should sort of be quite firm already, but we'll make sure it's properly down with a 20mm round head screw. So that should not only join them together, but it should make this a very strong connection. And we get rid of the risk of snapping that off here, which I guess could have happened with the old one. Now 68, another 5mm cube magnet into the post aligning the north so it points towards the dots. That's always the standard with AuthentiKit. You'll find a dot, but the dot's not up here, the dot's down there on the brake lever. So it's the dot there is north. So the way we do it, we hold the south, we let it flick. Now we know that the north is that way, and I find this works well. You put the flat of the screwdriver on like that, pull that away. Now north is there, and we just pop it in. Perfect. Now we take a couple of 6700 bearings, we put them on the back and the front of the brake lever cylinder. That's the cylinder, so let's put one on the front and push it down. Make sure it's down. There we go. We needed a little bit of work to get that down. And one here. And then that, yeah, that's seated well. It's not sticking proud in any way. So that's there. And fit the brake lever post through the bearings from the back. So brake lever post through here. There it is. Yep, and we can see the magnet poking through the bearing at the front. Now we need the little screw. That's the brake lever screw, and this little tool that we've made, that's the wrench for it. And the wrench holds it like that. And then we pop it in here and we screw it on. Let's see, is it going? Yep, it's going on. I can feel it tightening up. And I hope you can see there that it's gone right down. It's sort of fully over the post. And not sticking up in any way, so give it a... Yeah, that's good. Don't hugely tighten it. Don't sort of strip the thread on it or anything, but that's holding really well. Okay. Now 72, we've got this brake sensor holder and another hall sensor, and we need to pop this in, and it goes in this way there, and again make sure it's the right way round. You could drive it in the other way, but don't. Now then, tip here. I think I found that if I bend the legs a bit that way, yeah, I think it just goes in slightly easier, because that's what happens once it's gone down the hole. Yeah, and then the top of the sensor should be kind of flush with the top here. And then we've got some legs at the back that, again, we need to spread those to the side and push them into the channels. Okay, like that. Very good. And it's ferrule time again. 4mm off this time. I don't recommend having an overlap. That sort of wrap around and fold over, just because the channels are quite close together, and I think it just increases the risk that you'll get a stray strand. No prizes for guessing that it's red, blue, white is the order. So let's get the red one on and slide it well in. And then the insulation should go into that channel, just holding it safely enough while I give this a good crush. Again, try and get the tip on it. Actually, I've just realized I've been a bit hasty. What I should have done first is poke these red, blue, white wires up from the bottom so they come out the top. They will curve out that way more easily than they will this way, which is to send them from the top through the bottom. But I'm not undoing that one. I've already done it. I'm going to see how I get on. And then, well, that'll be useful. You will know if you do the same, you'll stand a chance of getting away with it as well. Right, I think we're good there. Take a good look that there isn't anything spilling across the channels. And now let's find out if we can get away with sending the wires down from the top instead of bottom up. I'm going to get rid of all the twists I can. That will certainly make it more tricky. So, yeah, not bad actually. Probably similarly difficult. The third one's a bit trickier than the first two. Yeah, that's okay. That wire pull method, you get two through, and then when you feed the third one, try and sort of slide everything together, and the friction of the first two help the third one down. Good. All right. So that's recovered. Now get the lengths of the wire all equal, so that when I pull everything through, there we go. And then fold these wires. There's a little scoop on the side of the sensor here. And carefully pull these through, take up the slack, press the sensor in until it clicks in. Yep, it should be fully flush. We haven't lost any connection, we haven't got any crossover. Right, I've moved on a little bit there. I suggested taking a photo with your phone if you're not confident that there's no strands coming across here. Carefully pull the wires out. Yep, we're up to 78. Okay, a couple more of these self-tapping screws. And they go on here. That's good, that's flush, everything down there. Very good. Okay, 79, we're going to fit the lever latch to the spade handle with an M4 20mm round head. Goes that way, and the correct way round for it to go is not that way, because that little bit will be stuck in there. It's that way. So let's get the screw in here. And then just experiment with the tension a little bit. That should move quite easily, and you can now see that as you pull that in, you can put that latch over the top, and that will stop it and hold it in place, and then you can release it again. So that's moving nicely, just a little bit of friction. Perfect. Number 80, we've got a 3mm bungee cord, 15 centimeters long. We're going to tie a knot in one end and then cut the excess off. I'm going to tie the knot, I think, in that furry end, because the other end's going to go through that hole, and that furry stuff will be messy. So let's tie a knot, and don't want to waste anything, so let's slide the knot up towards the end. There we go, that's the excess. Then we slide this through, then we slide that cleaner end through the hole here. Needs a few twists to get it through, and then through this hole here. You see that one there? Yeah, that's going through there. Down that goes. It's a little bit scruffy. I might tidy that up later with a knife or something. These scissors didn't really do a neat enough job, but it's fine. And then we're going to tie another knot, and we want to make the knot as far as we can up here, because we want plenty of tension. So the trick is you pull it really tight, and then get a knot going. and then slide that nut as far up as you can. There we go, that's probably good enough. Good enough. And now, if we get some tension on there, that should cut better. Great. So this is the latching mechanism, which we didn't have in the first version. You would pull on the brake lever, you'd press across the latch, you'd let go, and it would hold it. So that is the parking brake applied. And then to release the parking brake, you'd have to pull the brake lever and let that go. And now step 83, we're going to fasten this angle bracket, or aileron bracket, it's sometimes called, to the base of the spade, and it goes that way round, not the other way round. So you'll need to thread the wires through the holes. Like that. There we go. And then just pull them carefully, slowly up until you can get the screws in. And the screws you need are 25mm countersunk. Very good. Okay, so that takes us to another checkpoint. And this checkpoint is like A and B. Let's take the red, blue, white wires. These are the axis wires, or the axis for the brake lever. And just like with A and B, where we were testing the roll and the pitch, you can put the red, blue, white in that order. Red in the left, blue, and then white. Connect that up with the Ethernet, and you'll see the same axis, pitch Y, moving as you move the brake lever. So that's a test you can do. But we'll be moving on. We're going to take two 27cm lengths of black silicon tube. You'll need the right spec. Check. It's the ATK 607, and we've got a specification of that on our website if you haven't bought the kit. And we're going to be threading these wires through each one. If you try just to shove them through like that, you won't succeed because there'll be way too much friction. So this is how we do it. So in the kit for this flight control, we recommend a piece of craft wire. So it's very thin, I can't remember, 0.5mm, even less. Take the end of it, fold it over. You might have done this already if you've done other builds from AuthentiKit. Fold it over and then twist the ends together so you make a little kind of noose like that. A thin noose. Pretty tiny, isn't it? And then what you're going to do is we'll start with the red, blue, white. We're going to strip off more than usual. Best part of an inch actually. Okay. Not quite an inch, 3/4 of an inch maybe, of stripped wire. Twist them together so there's a tight tip to them. Thread them through the hole of the noose, fold it over, and then get a good twist on the silicone wire. So you get that sort of thing. And then take the end of the craft wire and carefully run it through the black silicone tube. There it is. And then just pull everything through. You'll still need to pull carefully. There's often still a fair bit of friction. But now, there we go, we're through. And then keep pulling it through. Keep going, keep going. And level up the wires. The white's a little bit longer than the rest. And then push the silicone all the way up into the cup. So this kind of cup piece here. So just keep doing that until it seats. There we go. Seats in that cup, and then just make sure that's good and snug. Yeah, brilliant. So that's one. Let's do that on the other one. There's the other one coming through. It's a little bit stiffer. What happens is you end up getting twists in here. And the more twists you've got, then the tougher it is. But they've come through okay. Let's just free that off again. Yeah, I must have a few twists in this one. But it's working. It's fine. That's great. We're there on both of them. Now we have a couple of hose connectors. That's what they look like. And we're going to thread these hose connectors along the tube so that the hourglass shape, so this bit, is at the bottom. So thread it like this. There we go. It's easier just to keep the twists of the exposed ends of the wire together. Now underneath the hose connectors there are two holes. In the upper one there'll be an M4 screw, and in the lower one, in each case, we're going to fit a small peg. So let's just get those pegs in. There they are, tiny things. They may need a bit of help being pressed in, because they should go in quite... There we go. That's what they should look like when they're seated. It's only about 2 mil showing through. That's it. Put them back, round, rotate these round again, and slide the hose connector up so that the little peg fits into the lower of these two holes. So it's just an alignment thing. It's just a seating thing. So that one screw at the top can kind of make sure it stays where it needs to be. And now from the back we're going to use two M4 20 mil countersunk screws, and we're going to run that through, and at some point, if we've got things lined up right, it'll bite, it'll grab onto the hose connector and start, yeah, I can feel it with my thumb, and start to get a purchase on there. So that's going in. But what you don't want to do is drive it more than about that far at the moment. And the reason for that, as it says in the instructions, is that when this is fully in, it will break through the hole that the black silicon tube goes through. It'll crush through the plastic. It'll press against the black silicon, and it'll press all the insulated wires tightly against the wall on the inside. So in other words, it'll put a grip on it. And the idea of that is that if this gets tugged, if you catch it and pull it, you're not going to drag all the wires through from the fire case or from the axis here, because there's a pinch going on there that's going to grip them and protect them. So don't do more than that right now. In case we need to take things apart and reposition them. Only at the end we'll properly sort of tighten those up. 91, that's case front, and that is front fork. It's quite like the rear fork, but the hole is bigger. We'll come back to that later. So we're going to fasten this to this from this side with two M4 8mm countersunk screws. Okay, there we go. Now here's a small step that's kind of optional, but it just helps fasten things down just a little bit more neatly. Okay, I've just snipped off a couple of small lengths of PLA, 1.75mm. It says take two 5mm lengths. That's a bit more than that, but it doesn't matter. We're going to be cutting them back a little bit more further anyway. But what we're going to do is test pressing them. In fact, I'm going to use the longer piece for this task, but you could do it with the smaller one. Test pressing them into the holes, these holes at the top. And by test pressing them, it might be that you need to sort of put them in and give them a twist and make sure that they will go in easily. Yeah, that's all right. Just might need a little bit of opening out. They're at an angle, by the way. They're not purely vertical. They're that way. And then on the underside of the case, same again. Okay. It's the other angle this way. It's pointing out. So I'm just opening these out a bit. Press these firmly into, stick back. Okay, I'm going to give them a little press in. Would have been better if they were only 5mm actually. And now cut these off so there's only about 2mm protruding. Cut a bit off so there should only be about 2mm protruding. I guess that's more like 3. I think we'll be okay though. Now test fit that this will press over here and go down flush. Yeah, that's pretty good. So because they're at an angle, this won't lift off. That's the job they're doing. And then slide them out again at an angle. Okay, they've transferred to the top. Now that's fine. If they both stay on the top or they both stay on the bottom, that's fine. If there's one in each, it's a bit more fiddly when we put these back on again. So that's the test fit bit. So we're done there. Number 94, take the angle bracket and hold it between case front and front fork. So like that. Then run the wires through these holes at the bottom so that you can run the black tubes and seat the black tubes, I should say, into the cups at the bottom. There we go. And now clamp the hoses down. We've got tube clamp lower, tube clamp upper. They're actually identical, so let's do tube clamp lower first. And we use a 10mm countersunk screw. So now we've got some protection against the wires inside here being dragged out from this end as well. They hold everything quite tightly. Okay, now we're bringing these two together. I've taken the springs off. They were still attached at the top there. I need to rotate that roller fully forward so that these big bumper stops are up against the top here, because that gives us a clear channel for the wires straight through from here, straight through to here. Now we can take these two groups of wires, and it's helpful that they're still knotted together, twisted together at the end, and you should be able to run those wires straight through here. And out the back. There we go, that's one. Keep these in a nice straight line, try and get as many twists out as you can. In fact, removing all twists is good here. Now if you're having trouble with bringing these through, you can do the pull-through method, which is where you pull through the red, blue, white, that should go okay, and then you grab all 6 wires and you push the group through there, and then we see the next batch come through. So now we've got, let's level the amounts up on these. There we go. Now we've got all 6 wires. I've not untwisted these as well as I'd like, but I'll let you do that on yours. All 6 wires sliding through. Now that all of that is done, and we know that we could pull these together very easily when we need to, just slide that out of the way, and now we can attach the pitch springs. So let's make sure that everything's running freely there. Let's take that one, and then that one. Then we've got this pitch spring yoke here, this sort of double yoke thing, and then we can hold it all down very, very firmly with 3 of these round head 20mm. There we go. Straighten that up a little bit. That's better. Okay, now we can pull this through. Let's get these 6 wires again. Batch of 6. Pull these neatly through. We don't want any wire here sort of gathering and having a chance of binding or catching that webbing, which is going to be under a lot of tension. So pull that gap together there so that fits snugly. And we've got our little pegs at the front to do at the same time. They should just drop in. Let's find those. There they go. They drop in. That's all snugly up there. And then we can fasten this down with 4 M3 countersunk screws. And basically, if you need to take this apart again to look at what's inside, you just kind of reverse these last steps from this point, which is that you would take these screws off, and the next bit where I'm going to show you where we fasten the aileron or angle bracket down to that big disc, then you'll be able to slide the wires out and just and then just gently pull away the lid to access the what's inside. Step 101. We're going to put a couple of screws in this hole. Let me find the hole underneath in the big disc, and this hole in the angle bracket. Okay. Don't bite too hard on that. There's not a huge amount of thickness underneath this disc, but there's 6 of these things, so it's still a very strong fit. Okay, so we've got 2 in. Now we can do the center one, so that's a 20mm countersunk. There, you can get that good and tight. And you should be able to get full travel. You can see how these are the stoppers, the end stops for travel. Make sure that you don't catch any of this tubing while you're doing it. It may be that you give the tubing a little twist down here, just to change the way it kind of folds and kinks, so that you don't catch it between these 2 pieces. But that's working all right. Oh, there you go. That's what I'm trying to show you. So let me just twist it, make it sort of stick up instead of to the side. There we go. Right. Now it doesn't get caught. Okay, 4 more screws are needed on that big disc. We can reach these 2 at the top without too much trouble. Now my little screwdriver's struggling with that one, but I think if I use this, it's good enough. Then the last 2 we cannot access unless we pull everything round. So pull it round and hold it. You don't want to let go while you're part way through fitting this. Hold it like that, and then get this one in. And then same on the other side. Step 104. This is the aileron screw, and that's going to go in that hole and cover over the screw in the middle. And the easy way to twist that in is with a coin. Remember the good old days when we used coins? So just put it in there and then anti-clockwise. And there you go. So remember, it's sort of slightly counterintuitive. When you unscrew it, you'll be taking it clockwise. Now grab the rear fork from before. We've got the rear case, and this attaches just like the front fork with a couple of M4 8mm screws. There we go. Now grab the back disc, which I've proposed printing in grey or silver. Slide that in here and fit the combined unit to the body, to the stick body, through the middle there with an M4 14mm, like that. Now a couple more of those tiny M3 screws will finish off securing this back plate. And we're nearly there on the finishing touches. That is the back bolt, and that is the screw back nut. Now, depending on how well it's printed, you may find that they don't screw in very easily. So you might have to sort of work them a bit. I found that this goes in from that side a little bit easier. You don't want to grab this with any sort of pliers or you'll sort of damage it, but it just needs working a bit. Okay, I've kind of found that threading the other end of the screw through the nut here, it's gone through a bit easier. Still a bit tight, but just good enough. So what you want to do is run it through so that the nut is near that end. And then you can screw the screw into there and the nut will just jam on, cover everything off and give it a nice tight grip. That's the finish you're looking for. How about that? That is a fine bit of detail, isn't it? That's Kasu's work. All of that detail, modeling all of that. Amazing, amazing work. Okay, 110. Here's the pitch base. We're going to fit it to the roller. Now, there's a bunch of wires here, aren't there? You can see that there's a thin group of 3 on the right, and there's a slot for those. So let's get those through. Okay, so those are the pitch wires. And then we've got a second batch of wires. Now, remember the ones that we taped. Take the taped ones and get those through that hole first. Those are the roll wires. Now take the tape off, avoid any twists, run those wires up this little wire guide here, which I think you can see. So we know now that those roll wires are separated out from the other wires, which are going to come through here, because some of those wires have got red, blue, white in them. Now let's take the rest of the wires through that hole. Right, they're all through. The roll wires up at the top, nicely separated out. Everything else here. Pitch wires over there. And now I can fix that pitch base to the roller with 4 M4 14mm screws. Okay. Okay, step 111. We're going to make a joint of all of these 3 red wires and another piece about 10 centimeters long around this little post on the left here, which is going to be an M3 flange screw. So the way we do that is we strip off a good amount of, I've already got some there, that's fine. Yeah, like an inch or so of red wire from all of these. Twist them all together. Try not to have too many twists in everything, I suppose. Let's pull that out there. And this one here. Okay, so that's 4 wires being joined together. Make a little loop. Take it round here. And then grab all those. Okay. And then I'll just... Okay, that's the red joint. Ah, I've done it the wrong way around. That's step 112, the joint of red wires. Right, the joint of ground wires, it's not all of the ground wires. So from the wiring diagram, we can see that we're joining the black and we're joining the blue from the roll, which is this blue, and the blue from the pitch, which is this blue. So it's not the blue that comes out with that big batch that was 6. So we're going to join that blue, and we're going to join the black from that little bunch down there. So let's join those. And then another piece, similar length, grab those. They'll be jointed around a post on this side. And now we take 4mm of insulation off every wire. So I need a little bit more there. These are too long. They need to be cut down. Now we take the RJ45 we've been using earlier for tests and we pop it in here. Pull back the lid and now wire it up as per this wiring diagram. So it's the red in here. There's the red and we clip that down. And then next it's the blue from the jointed side, not the batch of blues, not the blue from the batch down here. Then it's the white from the pitch side over here, not the white from down here. Then it's the white from the roll, which are the upper 3 here. Yellow and green are pretty easy. Then there's only 1 blue left and only 1 white. So again, I recommend take a photo with your phone, zoom in, make sure everything looks nice and clear and no strands crossing over. Click that down for the final time, hopefully. The pitch base lid goes on with 4 10mm countersunk screws. Okay, on with the dovetail next. Now you've seen dovetails before, unless this is your first AuthentiKit flight stick or AuthentiKit control even, because we use them for so many things. But this one's a bit different. It's compatible with the others, so it still just slides on as a quick fit onto this stick mount, which fastens to your monitor stand, and away you go. But what we found was that compared to the old flight stick, which had quite weak forces, the strength of the springs on this meant that as you were moving in pitch and roll, this would just twist around, and you can't feel it here, not until you put some real strength on. It would twist and creak, and it was kind of unsatisfying. So this version of the dovetail has 3 fixings. 3M4 nuts drop into here, and then you can optionally, once you've fitted this onto the flight stick base, you can put 3 screws, M4 round head screws, into here, screw them in from behind, and get a really tight fix so that you don't get that kind of twisting and creaking. So the way you set this up is you've still got some holes again. We had this before where the holes that are straight through there have kind of got a filament cover up, so you need to just open them up with your Phillips head screwdriver. Press the nuts in like this. So the recesses for these nuts have a chamfer on them. And as you pull the nuts in, they kind of get tighter and tighter, and just pressing them in, you might struggle. So the best thing to do is drag them through. So I'll just do it there. You should see that screw being dragged through until it's flush. So they're ready. And now put the dovetail on like that, so that the open end is to the bottom, the closed end is up where the RJ45 is. And we're using 4 M4 countersunk screws. And that's the base fitted, so it will just slide onto the stick mount like that. And then you got the option of fixing it nice and firmly with these 12mm round head screws, so they just go in like that. And you shouldn't find it too difficult to locate the screw holes from underneath, which is how you would be fitting it normally. Okay, we're very nearly up to the last step. Now we put the grip onto the spade handle. That gives you a nice little bit of texture and grip, and it's also kind of useful because it's pretty impossible to avoid that slightly scruffy printing on the underside of the top of the spade handle. So that will disappear now. So the grip, again, is part of your kit. So the way that works is it's, I don't know if you've applied one of these to a tennis racket, but it's the same thing. You've got to get the plastic thing off first. Then there's a little tab there, a little slightly sticky tab, so peel that off. And then I would probably start from this side. I think you can start from any side really. And just get a wrap on it. Overlapping as you do. You've got to pull fairly tight to avoid that sort of thing going on. Okay, so when you get to this point, run it over the back of the switch. And in fact, what I found quite useful here is to sort of slightly change direction on it. There we go. And if you get the right amount of overlap, it should be a perfect fit. So you end up like that with a little loose bit. But part of the kit includes this little bit of tape. So peel that off, take your loose bit and tape it on. Beautiful. So that, my friends, is a Spitfire Mark9 Flight Stick Generation 2. And I hope you agree with me that I think that is a beautiful thing. Thanks again to Casu for coming up with this beautiful detailing and modeling all these details in here. And everyone else who's helped with the development of this. I'll put a link in the description to the mounting system video, which talks more about the rest of that stuff that clamps to your desk. And that will explain why you've still got a few screws in your kit, because these are for the arm lock. Because a bit similar to the fact that this starts to creak and twist because of the extra forces, the arm lock is more important as well. That's the thing that stops the arm of the monitor stand sort of twisting around the main pole as you sort of pitch and roll. So that thing goes with the parts that you print to really get a clamp on that and stop that happening. As I've already explained, you connect it to your universal hub through the stick input, H1. Okay, guys, I'm absolutely dying to know what your sticks look like. There were some superb versions created of version 1, and I'm sure that there will be some fabulous versions of generation 2. So please, when you've finished, upload a photo, share it on the AuthentiKit download website. There's a gallery there. Share it on Discord. Share it on Facebook. Come on, let's see what you can do. Well, that is just about it for now, but I've got one more tip for you. If you're flying the Spitfire in Microsoft Flight Simulator, then you'll know that the default position of the parking brake is for it to be on. In other words, for that to be sort of forced open by the parking brake on sort of switch. More realistic is that it's off so that you can then apply it on yourself in a mechanical way with the latch. And there is a way of doing that, which was shared with me by Flying Iron Simulations. I'll put it on the screen now. Basically, there's a file called apron.flt that you need to find in your folder for the Flying Iron Spitfire. Find this line and set the value to 0.00. Then when you launch into the Spitfire, you'll find that the parking brake defaults to off. Far better. Oh, and now everything's finished. Don't forget to tighten those 2 screws up. Now, if you're new to AuthentiKit, I guess I should give you a health warning. This is really addictive stuff. Now that you've got the stick and you've probably already got the trim wheels, you're going to want the throttle, the rudder bias, the flaps, all the rest of them. They're all available on the website for download, free download, of course, with one exception. That's the magnetos. I've yet to do the download video on that. So that will be the next Spitfire video that I release. So make sure you've subscribed and get that as soon as it's ready. Until then, happy flying and bye for now, folks.